So we broke down the framework into 5 distinct areas, each of which do not have to happen in silos. In fact, we like them to happen in parallel in some ways because you'll see they feed onto each other. So there's no, particular order that says you've got to do this before this, but there is some rational understanding of why you might want to start with number one, which is really about if you're in an organization, it's really understanding what is the accessibility mandate or the driver that is leading you towards this goal. Brian mentioned earlier, is it regulatory requirements? Is it customer or market share? The reality is an organization needs to clearly articulate what is their mandate, what are they willing to do, why they're willing it to do, and make sure that they have the necessary leadership to support this. So initially, accessibility can be expensive. Let's not kid ourselves. We're trying to build skills. We're trying to buy tools, so we are going to need to invest in accessibility. So particularly in large organizations, if you're looking to, in to deal with thousands of products or web pages or applications, there is going to have to be some investment that's going to be made into that. And so that leadership, that buy-in from your product owner, from your chief information officers, and if you have a chief accessibility officer, that's great. But all of them need to be on the same page. And you need to be sure that as part of that leadership too, you have representations of persons with disabilities. So whether you have people in the executive levels that have accessibility needs or have disclosed the disability or not, make sure that you have the voice of persons with disabilities so you can ensure that your mandate is actually an impactful one. It's not just about meeting a checklist, it's not just about compliance, but it's really about what difference will it make to those individuals who are going to use your products and use your services. The second level of the pillar really speaks to about that foundation, right? So you're looking at your policies, you're looking at what standards are you going to adopt? You're looking at where, what kind of training and education are you going to need to build that awareness within the organization? This is what I call sort of a little bit of that baseline exercise. Where are you? If you're going to start accessibility, where are you? Where are you starting from? You know that you probably want to achieve whatever, if we're talking about digital standards, for instance, you're going to want to achieve EN 301-549, which are the European standards. If you're doing built, for instance, you're going to want to achieve accessibility environments. If you're content, you want to make sure that those accessibility standards for PDFIU or UI rather are met. So what are those standards that you're trying to achieve and what's that goal? And the whole process here is really about looking at the policies, the processes, where do you have find that opportunity to inject that accessibility language or accessibility checkpoint so that when you're building out, or, you're building out the capacity. You're actually building out the capacity. This is an area where many organizations will actually go to a third-party vendor to help them actually identify where their baseline is and what are some of the barriers that exist, and help them prioritize how they're going to address those gaps or those barriers. The third section really speaks about that whole concept of integration and implementation. And there's two components to that. And I always say, my tagline was stop talking about it, just do it. You're looking at opportunities where you've got a new project in flight, you've got a product that you're starting to develop, put forward accessibility requirements right then and there. You project managers, ask those questions right up front. Make sure that you ask the question, who's using this product? How is it going to be used? Who's using this website? How is this website going to be used? Is it an interactive website? Is it dynamic? Is it a static, which these days don't exist very much, but is it a learning platform, for instance? Is it a gaming tool? How, what what is this tool going to be used for? What's the purpose of this tool? And take the opportunity right then and there to sort of say, we're going to stop the bleeding, we're going to stop adding barriers, and we're going to include accessibility in everything that we do effective now. And you can, again, that sort of can break down in two aspects. You can do it internally or you can do it externally. So the fourth so integration, and then the second part of that is remediating, right? How devising a plan to remediate what needs to be addressed. The fourth one really speaks about reporting, audit, and requirements. And the key here is, what I want to really stress here is that as part of project management, we know that if we can't measure it, we can't manage it. How are you going to measure accessibility? How do you know you're successful? Right? So think about those indicators, those dimensions you're going to use to measure. And the last component of this really speaks to about the maturity. And Brian spoke a little bit about that. So how do you know that you're moving from growth to maturity? By ensuring all your documentations are up to date, that you're moving that initial capacity building to truly integrate to an integrated modality. The next few slides are just really about sort of reiterating the fact that accessibility is one of those things where you need to treat it like security. It's important, it's imperative, it's an imperative business driver. And if you do that, then it doesn't get compromised or set aside because it's seen as an afterthought. Communication is key. So as you go through this process, communicate frequently, let people know, what you're doing, how to, which stakeholders will be engaged in the process and what their needs are. Use your RACI models to identify roles and accountability.